Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Well, it's official. The mold epidemic has begun. Now, I looked back and I was like, when did we start talking about this? And it's been about a year, hasn't it? And so I went back and I actually found that one of the very first videos that we did about fungus and mold. We're going to play that at the end of today's show. Thanks for the sound checks, everybody. And here is the headline from this morning. Just broke yesterday. Fox Weather. And how did we know all of this was going to come to pass? Well, it was based on the programming, right? Now, the most recent programming from the TV series The Last of Us wasn't the first time we started hearing these hints of mold, like a mold zombie apocalypse or mold demonic possession. This has been going on for a very long time, as I will show you in the video that we decoded from 1 year ago. Now, how else did we know this? Well, of course, we listen to the Holy Spirit, and it guides us no matter how ridiculous something sounds. It seems like as soon as we start talking about it, all of a sudden it manifests. This is God trying to warn people, isn't it? This is what it's about. It has nothing to do with me or how great I am. It has to do with the Holy Spirit working through each and every one of us to try to warn the body of Christ against the weapons of the enemy. And this is why God can say that no weapon shall prosper, because he informs the body of Christ about the things that are coming before they even get here. And that is amazing. And that is how we feel safe. And this is how we have faith, isn't it? Now, I also heard testimonials from many of you who have experienced mold symptoms in your life. I've seen it firsthand. And you are suffering and nobody would listen to you. And my love for the people who are going through this prompted me, even back then, it's as silly as it sounded, to dig into and expose some of these mold films where they were starting to seed in this demonic mold that was taking over homes. And so, here we go. Today, at the end of the show, we will present to you the privilege about a mold cult. It's actually a fungus cult. And then on Monday, I'll be re-uploading Archive 81, which is also about a mysterious mold, a mold cult. Again, these were videos from a year ago. So we'll see, how all of this has come full circle. But first, I want to check out this official announcement of a breaking fungal epidemic. They are saying in California and Arizona. Now understand that according to the program, much of this is spiritual. Much of it is spiritual. So God will preserve his people, won't he? So if you're going through this, pay close attention, because God will reveal answers on how to combat this. Now, many of you even came up with something that you think could be causing this. But I can tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that some of the people suffering from this never got poked. So we can't label the people that are suffering from this as people who got the poke. But some people are saying that if you get the poke, it does something to the immune system, which could cause or allow for mold to grow in your body. So these are things to consider as we move forward through all of this. Dangerous fungal illness rapidly spreading across the country, doctors warn. Fox Weather, I don't know why Fox Weather is reporting on this. Doctors are warning of a dangerous fungal illness rapidly spreading across the country, especially affecting those living or visiting California and Arizona. Now, I did come down with something when I went to California, probably bronchitis, it felt like, but I had, I just wasn't feeling all that great. And I got back here to Arkansas and I felt better. I'm not saying this is what it was from, but there's a lot of rain that just happened in California. So you can imagine this would be perfect conditions for mold with all the leaks, people's roofs. Let's keep reading here. If you think it sounds like something from the cutting room floor of the Last of Us series where a parasitic fungal infection devastates mankind, there are some very base level similarities. And as I've always told you guys, Hollywood is visual voodoo. They already know it's coming. They depict it in fiction, and it's a kind of voodoo as they poke the needles into the doll, basically enacting the future that they already know is coming. Now, oftentimes they'll hyperbolize a lot of this in Hollywood. I don't think we're going to get to the point where it's full-blown zombie apocalypse like depicted in some of these series, but part of the ritual is the fear. So they have to hyperbolize it to make the ritual work, to make the sorcery work, if that makes any sense. Let's keep reading here. Valley fever, significant cause of pneumonia, said Dr. Brad Perkins. And this is a fungus. A former Center of Disease Control Prevention official who led the anthrax bioterrorism investigation. Most causes of pneumonia are caused by bacteria. This is a fungus that lives in the soil and is breathed in dusty situations, whether it's a dust storm around the country or construction or excavation. These people have valley fever, or the second from the left, Emily, 3 days a week at San Joaquin Valley Pulmonary back in 2005. Valley fever and VID-19 share many of the same symptoms. Cough, difficulty breathing, fever, tiredness, fatigue. In rare cases, it can spread to other body parts, and cause severe disease. Animals, including pets, can also get valley fever by breathing in fungus spores from dirt and outdoor dust. However, it cannot spread from one person or animal to another. There are 200 deaths a year due to the disease. These are mostly people with severe immunocompromising illnesses underlying this infection. So it does appear to be some kind of a setup that they're setting up here for something much more serious to come, because we all know what happens when your immune system is compromised. I'll just leave it at that. Prevention is challenging. Risk is mostly associated with travel to high-risk areas. People concerned about the risk of developing valley fever should try to avoid dusty situations, mostly in the summer in peak heat. So if it's in the summer in peak heat, why are they talking about it now in the middle of winter? Why are they bringing this up now? CDC is even talking about this. It's in Washington State, a different fungus. There's another one in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, Texas. According to CDC, Southern California, particularly Southern San Joaquin Valley and Southern Arizona, including metropolitan Phoenix and Tucson, have the highest reported case rates of valley fever. Some of it's in West Texas and along the Rio Grande River. Well, pretty much the entire western United States, where it's not cold anyways. So this goes on. I will put a link to the story for those of you that are interested, but it appears as though this has begun. They wouldn't have done an official story on this if it wasn't the case. Now I want to continue here with a startling discovery right from the Bible. Now, we had talked about this before. Cannot find the video where we talked about it. But something is going on with leprosy and mold. According to the Bible, mold and leprosy are one and the same. This is Brown Driver Briggs Concordance. Leprosy. In people, malignant skin disease. In clothing, a mildew or mold. In buildings, a mildew or mold. Wow. Now, here's all the information. Sara'ath is how you say it. Or let's see what it says here.
Sara'at.
Sara'at. Let's listen to that.
Sara'at. Sara'at.
Sara'at. Sounds like they're saying raw inside of it, doesn't it? Now, the Bible treats this very, very seriously. I'll put links to all this for those of you that are interested. The Bible treats this very seriously. It actually says if mold is found in a house, that you have to burn it down. Now, we're going to read these passages. We're going to read Leviticus 13 and 14. This is QBible.com. No association with Q. We've been in this Bible long before Q was ever a thing. But I like using this website because you can hover over each of the words and it brings up the concordance right next to the word. And I love this because I can double check how they interpreted each of these passages. And I found mistakes. Now in this case, we're going to pretty much read straight through this because it talks about all of this. It talks about the mold. Let's go down here. And it talks about leprosy. It in fact begins the entire discussion about leprosy. Then it goes into the clothes, and then it goes into the homes. It talks about red mold. It talks about green mold. And it talks about white mold, which they call leprosy. This is unbelievable. And now you understand the problem. When you find mold in a home, you can't abate it. It doesn't work like that. According to this, the only solution is to burn it down. So if you have a mold problem in your home that's affecting your health, best thing probably to do is move. Let's get into some of this. If a man also or a woman have in the skin of their flesh bright spots, white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and behold, the bright spots in the skin, their flesh are darkish white. It a freckled spot groweth in the skin, he is clean. And the man whose hair is fallen off his head, he is bald, he is clean. And that hath his hair fallen off from part of his head toward his face, he is forehead bald, yet he is clean. And yet, if there be in the bald head or bald forehead a white reddish sore, a leprosy sprung up in his bald head or his bald forehead. Leprosy, Sara'ath. Let's keep reading. Then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, the rising of the sore, white reddish, in his bald head or in his bald forehead, as the leprosy appeareth in the skin of the flesh. He is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean, his plague in his head. And the leper, in whom the plague is, his clothes. So now we're going to talk about the clothes. Shall be rent, and his head bare. And he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, shall be defiled. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone without the camp in his habitation. B. The garments also that the plague of the leprosy is in, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it be in the warp or the woof of linen. I don't know what warp and woof means. Let's see here. Warp means a fixture that is warp is in weaving. So this is like the weaving of it, or what does this say? I'm trying to teach you guys how to read these concordances and use these sites because it is vital for correct biblical study. So this is the web or transverse threads. So the warp and the woof must mean like the cross stitching is what it kind of sounds like it's saying there, of linen or of woolen, whether in a skin or in the thing made of skin. And if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin. So this would be your red mold and your green mold. Either in the warp or in the woof or in anything of the skin, it is a plague of leprosy. It shall be shewed unto the priest, or showed to the priest, and the priest shall look upon the plague, and shut up it that hath the plague 7 days. And he shall look on the plague on the 7th day. If the plague be spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in the skin, and in any of the work that is made of skin, the plague is fretting, leprosy, it is unclean. He shall therefore burn that garment, whether warp or woof, in woolen or in linen, or in anything of the skin, wherein the plague is, for it is fretting leprosy, it shall be burnt in the fire. So they actually, it sounds like almost like not only did they burn the garments, they burned the skin too, where the leprosy is. And if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, in the warp, and the woof, anything in the skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing wherein the plague, and they'll shut it up for 7 days more. And the priest shall look on the plague. After that, it is washed, and behold, if the plague have not changed his color, and the plague be not spread, it is unclean. So now you're starting to see they're letting it grow to see if it's going to culture or grow or spread again. If it doesn't, then it's okay. But if it does grow again, it's burnt in the fire. Now, I think we have a pretty good idea of this. Now let's get into what they talk about when it comes to homes. This is mostly covered in chapter 14. So, let's find that. Let's see here. Priest shall go forth at the camp. Priest shall leprosy. Priest. Let me go down to the part where it talks about that. Start reading down here. Talking about birds and wood and scarlet. And let's see here. Hair, eyebrows. Okay. Oh, I got an idea. Let's just go back here. This says it's in 14:34 to 53. Let's read. When ye be come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in a house of the land of your possession. And he that owneth the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, It seemeth to me there is as it were a plague in the house. Then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest go to see the plague, that all that is in the house be not made unclean. And afterward the priest shall go in to see the house, and he shall look on the plague, and behold, the plague be in the walls of the house with hollow strakes, greenish or reddish, which in sight are lower than the wall. So this is mold inside the walls. It's mentioned in the Bible. Let's keep reading here. Then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. The priest shall come again the 7th day, and shall look, and behold, the plague be spread in the walls of the house. Then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague is, and they shall cast them into an unclean place without the city. Okay, so it does appear they're doing some mold abatement here. So they're pulling the stones off only. Let's keep reading though. And he shall cause the house to be scraped within round about, and they shall pour out the dust that they scrape off without the city into an unclean place. So they looks like they're doing some mold abatement here. And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house. So then they put it back together. And if the plague come again and break out in the house, after that he hath taken away the stones, and after he hath scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look, and behold, the plague be spread in the house. It is a fretting leprosy in the house. It is unclean. So, what they appear to be saying here is that some molds will just continue to grow no matter what you do. Others can be abated. That's what they're saying here. So you have to keep watching it. And he shall break down the house, the stones of it, the timber thereof, and all the mortar of the house, shall carry them forth out of the city into an unclean place. Moreover, he that goeth into the house all the while that it is shut up shall be unclean until the evening. So if you're in the house, you have to go and get away from everyone because you're unclean. And then they basically dismantled the house if the mold keeps growing. And he that lieth in the house shall wash in his clothes, and that eateth in the house shall wash his clothes. And if the priest shall come in and look upon it, and behold, the plague hath not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And he shall take to cleanse the house 2 birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. All right. So we have ourselves some kind of solution here, don't we? Now, we know the Old Testament went by slightly different rules because they had a specific covenant with God, right? Like, for instance, we don't sacrifice animals anymore because Jesus came to be the sacrifice, didn't he? But there's some of this other stuff in here that could have medicinal value or some kind of solution. It says here the 2 birds, so I don't know if that was a sacrifice. Maybe the birds were canaries to see if the birds died. And I mean, it doesn't say all that. We're not supposed to add to the word, right? But I'm just looking at this going, what were the birds for? Cedar wood. We all know that cedar is really good for a lot of stuff. So maybe that would help abate the mold spores. I don't know what scarlet is. It says here, let's see here. Shawnee of certain derivation, crimson, probably the insect or its color. So this is scarlet is either an insect or the color, and hyssop, which is, hover over this one here, hyssop, which is something else. Anyway, those are just some ideas. I'm not telling anyone to go out and do rituals in their home. I'm just showing you what the Bible says. You need to pray to God, ask for him to fill you with the Holy Spirit and direction on this, if this is something you're dealing with. And he shall kill the one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. See, this is a sacrifice. This is what we're not supposed to be doing. And he shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet and the living bird and dip them in the blood of the slain bird and in the running water and sprinkle the house 7 times. Okay, so we're not supposed to do all that. All right, because none of us are priests. We're not under this covenant. And he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and with the running water and with the living bird and the cedar wood and the hyssop. But he shall let go the living bird out of the city into the open fields and make an atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for all manner of plague of leprosy and scall, and for the leprosy of garment and of the house, and for a rising and for a scab and for a bright spot. So, that lays it all out. Essentially, the takeaway here is that leprosy is the same thing that goes into garments, and the same thing that infects homes, and the same thing that infects people. It's the same word being used. Wow. So, let me check in with you guys, because that was jaw-dropping. It will give us some insight into the future, a shape of things to come, how to maybe, don't do the rituals, because the Bible says Jesus took care of all that, and none of us are priests, so different covenant. I want to be clear on that. And so how do you get rid of this? Well, Jesus probably is the overarching thing. You know, he made the sacrifice. There's only one way to the Father. So you pray to him to clean your house after you've abated your mold. And you say, Jesus, please keep my home clean. And then you walk in faith after you've done the work. And that's probably the extent of it. Now I'm going to play for you a decode that we did about fungal infection from 11 months ago. And let's see how things have come full circle now that they are admitting that there is fungus and mold, and that is an epidemic that is about to take over America. This is called the privilege. Let's get started. Well, a lot's been going on over the weekend, and I wanted to give you guys a break over the weekend. So I know that much of what comes through the media are lies, but it's no time to do this. The Bible does say how this is going to have somewhat of a double header. We're going to first start out with just some thoughts on what's going on in the stew crane. We're going to be using some code words today, so I pinned a glossary. Was Ten Pute right about the last read? I think 4 years ago, 20 weapons. Now I'm fast forwarding through this because this was a double header decode, so I'm getting to the part where we're talking about the privilege. So that's what you're hearing right now, the glitching. Let me get to the part where we're talking about here. Here we go. Well, we got a big problem with it. So, let's get into today's show. The rest of today's show, put together this montage for you guys for this film called The Privilege. Now, one of you guys asked me to look at this, and I watched it through once, and then I was like, wait a minute, I need to watch that again, because that just went right over my head. Watch it again, capture these clips, and here's what I found, and this is, again, unbelievable. Now, this one has subtitles, so I'm going to be doing a lot of reading, and you guys are going to be watching the images as I read the subtitles. This film just released this month, and it is literally full of pharmaceutical and Hydra programming. And it seems to reinforce what some of you have been seeing over the last several years. So this one is worth covering. This is called The Privilege. Now, released on February 9th, 2022, earlier this month. So let me give you the background on this film before we get into these clips. So this boy right here, he doesn't realize it, but he was adopted into this elite cult with his twin sister. And he figures out that his family is part of a pharmaceutical company that has secretly added a fungus to its medication. What does the fungus do? It turns people who take it into basically blue-blooded clones, host bodies for the elite to possess. Now, they call those who become the host bodies, they call them the privileged. This is literally everything that we've been studying for the past few years on this channel. Watch.
Ihr seid eine privilegierte Generation.
You belong to a privileged generation. Now, this is his doctor who is giving him the medication with the fungus in it.
Vergiss es nicht.
Don't forget that, she says. You are the privileged. Now, she is part of the pharma cult. And listen to what she says next.
Was ist das hier?
What is all this, he says. Now, this is the end of the movie, but I put this to the beginning so you could see this in tandem. Because that's how we really find the truth, right? What they do in these movies, it's some kind of weird sorcery. So they play things backwards. So in other words, they put little clues, but then they make it all come together at the end. But by the time you get to the end, you forget what you saw in the beginning, right? But if you piece the thing together, you edit it together correctly, the way it's supposed to be viewed, then the truth emerges. And that is a pharmaceutical cult with the intentions of preparing people for as host bodies for the elite. I mean, this is creepy, you guys. Let's keep watching here. He asked her, what is all this? And that's the doctor behind him, pushing him in a wheelchair. And listen to what she says.
Das sind wir.
Our true self.
Ihr seid eine privilegierte Generation. Wir hatten schon viele
We've had lots of names.
Namen. Gefallene Engel,
The fallen angels.
Dämonen,
Demons.
Handlanger des Teufels. Die
The devil's henchmen.
Wahrheit ist,
The truth is,
wir waren schon immer da.
we've always been here.
Unser Versprechen für eine bessere Konzentration.
So, the fungal bioweapon is delivered through this pill. And look at the soccer ball.
Für eine bessere soziale Interaktion.
The promise we make for a better social interaction. Let's back this up a little bit so you can see this. Let me interrupt here. Let me interrupt myself here for a minute. This is unbelievable, you guys. Let me check in with you guys. Make sure we're still connected. Make sure we have sound. And we'll keep going with this decode from a year ago where we were anticipating exactly what now the CDC says is the emerging threat, fungal infections across America. Let's keep going with this. Unbelievable. The promise we made for better concentration, a master race, right?
Konzentration. Für eine bessere soziale Interaktion.
Look at this. Now, we've been talking all about this soccer ball, haven't we, for a very long time. The message is obvious here. The pattern on the soccer ball matches the acrinodrome molecule, doesn't it? A pentagram with a hexagram. The simplest form of acrinodrome. Let's keep watching.
Yeah.
So, they basically promise here, this farm. Look at the T. Now, I'm interrupting myself again. This is the pharmaceutical company's name. And now we've learned so much since this last year, haven't we? Remember, we've gone into Google Earth and we saw Trump World Tower within blocks of all of the pharmaceutical company headquarters near the United Nations. Remember? And we had decided that the proximity of all the world headquarters, there's Pfizer, there's Bristol Myers Squibb, Novartis has their world headquarters within blocks of the United Nations building, the Secretariat. Remember? And then you have Trump World, which is the tallest of all of them, within blocks of the UN. Now, this is all starting to make much more sense. Him being the president who worked with the pharmaceutical companies for warp speed to create medicines. Let's keep going here. Pharmaceutical company, which is run by the fallen angels, right? They promise to make a more basically productive society. And that's because the person will now be possessed with the blue blood Hydra fungus.
Herzlich willkommen bei Quantum Medical Research. Unser Versprechen für eine leistungsfähiger werdende Gesellschaft.
Now, the pharmaceutical company, I'm interrupting myself again. I'm trying to be better about that because it gets a little confusing when I'm talking over my own on my own shows, right? The pharmaceutical company in this movie is called Trondhall. Trondhall. Okay? I don't know what that means in German, but let's keep watching.
Für ein glückliches Leben.
More productive society, an elated life. Tricozapam. Trick. And look at it's now trichinosis is a kind of sickness, isn't it? And that's like the name of the pill. Let's keep watching. Got actually the fungus inside. So that's where all this is headed. And now, why do I call the Hydra a fungus? Well, you're going to see in a minute here that the Hydra acts almost identical to a fungus. In fact, this fungus is called a Hydra. Look at this. Hydrathysium. There it is. A fungus called a Hydra. It's got many of the same properties. Let's read this real quick. The plant's pathogenic fungus Sclerotinia Sclerotinomium is capable of surviving for long periods of time in quiescent state via the production of sclerotium. This is a mass of vegetative cells surrounded by black melanized rind layer. Under appropriate conditions, the sclerotium will germinate and produce one or several fruiting bodies. They look like golf tees. They look like golf tees. The golf man himself. Unbelievable. Let's keep watching. Bodies are apothecia. In the course of my research investigating the regulation of fruiting body development, I discovered that the fruiting body can be manipulated to undergo a redevelopment process. Now, we're going to read next about how the hydra reproduce. And it's exactly by this process of budding, asexual, hermaphroditic budding. And this is where we're going to get into the spiritual ramifications of all of this and show you how this movie is actually very accurate as to what the plans are that the elite have for us as humanity. So, let's keep watching here.
Der Pilz dringt in den Körper des Wirts ein.
The fungus takes over and controls the host body, is what the teacher says as they're sitting in the classroom. Now, this is crazy because listen to this woman's voice. And here's where they break down the fungus and what it does, taking over the host body.
Der Ophiocordyceps unilateralis ist eine parasitäre Pilzart, die sich
It's got the same name as what's in The Last of Us, the cordyceps. Let me back that up.
auf
Look at this. Cordyceps. This links directly forward 1 year from when this aired to The Last of Us and all the programming for the fungus apocalypse. Let's watch.
Cordyceps unilateralis ist eine parasitäre Pilzart, die sich auf hochspezialisierte
Reproduces in a highly specialized way.
Weise fortpflanzt. Wandert ins Gehirn
Migrates to the brain and manipulates the insect so it doesn't control its own body.
und manipuliert das Insekt so, dass es keine Kontrolle mehr über seinen Körper hat.
Did you hear what she just said? It sounded like she said copperhead, didn't it? And that's because she kind of is saying it. Corpor is the English word for body. Or the German word for body. Corpor is the German word for body. Watch. And the German word for copper. The German word for copper is almost the same word for body. Copper is Kupfer, which sounds like corpor. It's almost the same word. Now, why would the word copper be so closely linked to the German word for body? Well, I think we explained it in last week's Decode on the role that copper plays in the human body. Now, trace amounts of copper are ubiquitous. In other words, they're found in the middle of almost every neurological function in your body. Cell-to-cell communication, the neurological pathways, all have copper as the gatekeeper. It's basically the taint, or the unclean part of us, the codependent infection that it's inside of all of us. Now I'm interrupting myself again here, because again, we've learned so much since last year. Because now they're admitting that 6G, they want to put copper coils on people's heads. And now you know why. Because they want to interface with our neurological systems. And so everything they're doing now to our bodies is preparing us for this future. This is why they want to keep poking us with things. And there's fungus and all these things. Let's keep watching. It's the codependent infection that it's inside of all of us. It's the tear inside of us. This is why the wheat have to grow up with the tear, because it's basically talking about your body. Your body has the wheat side and the tear side inside of it. And you can't separate them yet. They have to grow up together in your body until the end of your life or until Jesus returns. Let's keep watching here. So we're constantly having to battle our dark side. Okay? That's where Jesus comes in, because he came to save Jews and Gentiles, both bloodlines, through belief in him. No matter what blood we're mixed with. This is why people ask me over and over again, why don't you focus more on Hebrew Israelites or the RH negatives or all these things? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because you are saved through belief in Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter if you have RH negative attributes. Now, you might have some heightened sensitivity in the spiritual realm and some giftings because of it, but if your belief is in Jesus Christ, you will be saved. That's the whole point of why he came, because there were a lot of us that were probably condemned, right? Just like the ancient Canaanites were condemned to death. They were judged. God had the Israelites kill them off because they weren't in the covenant, right? And so then Jesus came with a new covenant saying we could all be saved through belief in him. That was the whole point of it. Now, if you're of the blue bloodline and you're running the world and enslaving God's people and doing all the things that God hates, then you're not saved because you're not believing in him. And this is why they crossbreed their bloodlines, because they're pure evil and they want to enslave God's people. They're in war with God in heaven. Let's keep watching here.
Körper hat.
sondern
Now, look at this ant, and look how the fungus grows out of the animal's head. Let me zoom this up a little bit. There's the ant down here, and this thing grows out of its head. Does this remind you of anything? It's controlling the ant, mind control. This is like the serpent coming out of the forehead of the Egyptian headdresses in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, isn't it? Now, she's then going to go on to describe how the fungus reproduce. They can regenerate even when they're cut in half through an asexual method called budding. They're hermaphroditic.
dem Pilz als willenloses Werkzeug dient. Der Pilz dringt in den Körper des Wirts ein.
There's this is the word for body.
Dringt in den Körper des
Let's back this up a little bit so you guys can see this.
dringt in den Körper des Wirts ein.
Host body is Wurzkörper. Wurzkörper. Unbelievable. Sorry, my German's terrible. They know we have copper in us.
Dringt in den Körper des Wirts ein, wandert ins Gehirn, keine Kontrolle mehr über seinen Körper hat, sondern dem Pilz als willenloses Werkzeug dient. Der Pilz wächst aus dem Kopf des Tieres und bildet neue Sporen aus.
Fungus grows out of the animal's head and then it forms new spores.
Wer kann mir denn sagen, was
Then she asks, can you tell me what hyphae are? And this is where you get the link to Hydra.
Hyphen sind?
Fadenzellen eines Pilzes.
Interrupting myself again. Notice the cell phone interaction here going on while they're talking about ants being controlled by a fungus. The cell phones. Let's keep watching. Thread cells of a fungus mycelium. Now we all know about the mycelium network. It's the method of communication between these fungus spores. This is the mind control, the hive mind.
Richtig. Gemeinsam einen Blick auf die asexuelle Vermehrung und die geschlechtliche
Here's where we get into the sexual and asexual reproduction of the amazing fungi kingdom.
Fortpflanzung von Pilzen werfen.
And so when they're cut in half, they regenerate to form a small hydra. The head will regenerate a foot, and a foot will regenerate a head. If the hydra is sliced into many segments, then the middle slices will form both a head and a foot. Wow. Now you have to ask yourself, these things are indestructible. Here's the budding process. It shows a picture here. Here the mother finds the boy's drawings of the hydra so that you know that they're talking about the hydra, because you'll see it here on the picture. And It says a new bud can form every 2 days.
Pilzsex? Das ist mein Spezialgebiet.
They're hermaphroditic, as you can see here. Is all this starting to sound familiar? Who is the hermaphrodite? It also talks about being compared to Medusa here. Now, here's the creepy part. Here's the creepy part. These things are literally, biologically immortal. Reminds me of the scripture that says, they shall seek death and not find it. And you have to wonder, is this the enemy's plan? To merge us somehow with Hydra and then possess us so we don't die. Now I'm going to interrupt myself just to check, do a sound check, make sure we're okay. Welcome everybody. Let's keep going with this. Unbelievable.
Ich habe deine Bilder gesehen, Finn.
Now, here, the mother, she had found his drawings. She says, I found your awful drawings, Finn. Finn is the boy's name here. And she confronts him at breakfast. And look at what they're eating for breakfast. Blended fruits and vegetables. She puts them in this blender. As you can see, they're all blended up. And I thought, spiritually, what does this really mean? Well, we are the fruits and vegetables. The Bible says it, be fruitful and fill the earth. Fruit comes from trees. We're from the tree of life. And the fruits make trees. Trees make fruit. The fruit of the womb is mentioned in the Bible. We are the fruit. And the enemy laughs about this. He mocks God and jokes about it. Every time you see a bowl of fruit on the table, chances are it's going to be related to this kind of sacrifice. We are the fruit.
Du weißt, dass du mit uns darüber reden.
And the blender represents being blended into the enemy bloodline, doesn't it?
Mir geht's gut.
So this guy talks about in this article that Hydra are biologically immortal. Now I'll put links to all this in the pinned comment, of course. But he also says it has the capacity for indefinite self-renewal. Now, can you imagine if this stuff was floating around in your bloodstream and just indefinitely, recreating itself, or somehow your DNA got linked up with this Hydra and you could indefinitely, renew yourself? You would be seeking death and not being able to find it, wouldn't you? Wow, let's keep watching here.
Pilze vermehren sich überwiegend durch
We know that the fungi reproduce mainly by forming spores.
die Bildung von Sporen.
Now, these Hydra have a weapon. It's a powerful weapon at the end of their tentacles, and it's basically a dart-like thread that paralyzes its victims with a neurotoxin. Tip of the spear. Let's keep watching. Upon contact with prey, the contents of the nematocysts are explosively discharged, firing a dart-like thread containing neurotoxins into whatever triggered the release. They can paralyze a prey, especially if many hundreds of nematocysts are fighting. Now, what do we have here? Well, this is another part of symbolism. You can see now that these movies aren't just thrown together, that every scene is carefully crafted. It's literally like you're watching sorcery. And basically, this is a swimming pool, okay? And what they have here is this swimming pool meme. Now, we've seen this swimming pool before, haven't we? This swimming pool was a pool that we had seen in Sacrifice, wasn't it? In different movies. And there are these blue tiles all throughout this swimming pool area. Now I'm going to pause myself there because, again, now with the information we have, we are starting to see what the blue tile is really about. Remember the movie decode we did on the super deep borehole? There was a movie about a fungus that spread as well in the super deep borehole. And in that movie, they were walking through blue tile lined hallways throughout the entire movie. Now, what could this mean? Well, now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it with all the information we have, well, this is where mold grows, right? This is where mold and fungus grow on these blue tiles, on these tiles in bathrooms. So essentially, they're showing you all of these teens partying inside the swimming pool. And this all goes back to human sacrifice. We also saw the blue tiles in a lot of the artwork of the elite, where they had children tied up. Remember that? Oh, I thought Trump was supposed to send all those people to jail. Apparently not. And what do the swimming pools really represent? Well, I think that they represent the blue tiles of the enemy, the scales of the serpent. And the pool really is the baptismal rebirth into the blue blood serpent, isn't it? This film actually released on the 40th day of the year. And 40, of course, represents rebirth and baptism in the Bible. That's why a child in the womb, the fetal gestation, is 40 weeks. They're baptized in their mother's womb before birth, 40 weeks. This is why the Hebrews were in the wilderness for 40 years after they went through the Red Sea. The birth, they were birthed into the wilderness, weren't they? And then it rained water again for 40 days and nights during the flood. And of course, Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days as well, didn't he? So in this film, it's all about the rebirth of the serpent inside the host body, the serpent in the chest. Let's keep watching here. So here the boy discovers the fungus inside of the medication in this copper colored pill, right? Now, let's back up a little bit because there's some other things I wanted to talk to you guys about, because the Hydra in this film and in studies that I've looked up do not contain copper. Okay, they're not copper-based hemocyanin life forms. But that doesn't mean that hemocyanin won't play a role in this conversion that we've been talking about. You see, Hydra find their prey when a particular cell is distressed, or a particular animal gives off this particular glutathione when it is in distress. This is how they find their prey. It's a distress signal. And the Hydra pick up on it. As you can see on your screen, here it is right here. The feeding response in Hydra is induced by glutathione, and it's basically the panic or oxidative stress release. I'm trying to think of what they actually call glutathione. Is it I guess it's some kind of substance, like an enzyme or something. But anytime you start poking around in the human bloodstream, weird things start to happen in your body. Let's keep watching. It's in the body that we release, right? And so this is the signal, and this is what they pick up on. Now, I looked into glutathione, right? What is it? Well, it is the gatekeeper for copper absorption in the body. Cellular glutathione plays a key role in copper uptake. So there is a copper connection to these Hydra. Hydra use glutathione as a signal to find prey. And glutathione is what regulates how you absorb copper in the body. Now, the weird thing is that copper in the study, is it this study? Copper actually killed the Hydra in this study. Hydra is a model of an organism to decipher the toxic effects of copper oxide, nanorod. So, what is this? Is copper a weapon that could be used against the Hydra? Probably. Maybe this is why, maybe Maybe this is why they're so afraid of it, or there's been rumors that it can actually take out and kill people, kill the giants. Maybe that's what this is really about. But I wonder about that because, believe it or not, the Philistine Goliath had a copper coat of armor, coat of mail, and his copper spear and everything. So if it was so dangerous to him, why would he be wearing it? So I don't know. Let's keep watching. It's actually toxic to the Hydra. Even though it uses this chemical to find its prey, makes you wonder. And so this begs the question, is this why they're buying up all the copper and concentrating it into these Jive G towers? Are they afraid of the copper? Is this a weapon against the Hydra? I don't know the answer to that. But basically, let's continue on with this. There's a couple more scenes I want to show you guys. We start to wind down the show here. He finds the Hydra inside of his copper-colored pill.
Scheiße, was?
Ah, ist ja eklig. Was ist das?
Vielleicht ein Wurm? Keine Ahnung, aber es wird größer.
So he shows it to his friend, this girl. They're trying to solve this mystery of what's going on. And so they're going to make the connection here that the Hydra acts more like a fungus than an animal or a worm because it feeds off of dead bodies. It's like a mold.
Das ist kein Wurm.
This is not a worm. They bring it to their chemistry teacher. She says, this is not a worm.
Das ist noch nicht mal ein Tier.
It's not an animal.
Das ist ein Pilz.
It's a fungus, a thread fungus. Remember, mycelial network. Thread.
Die Färbung ist allerdings sehr seltsam. Necrofungus psilocybelis.
Wir haben alte Einmachgläser gefunden. Im Keller.
Old jars in my cellar. Very moldy. So there's the mold connection.
Verschimmelte.
Normalerweise wachsen die auf Leichen.
They normally grow on dead bodies. Now, this is creepy because we've been talking about mold for the past 3 months, haven't we? And this movie just came out. So obviously this movie was in production, before we talked about this and then came out after. So this is what it means to be living in the Holy Spirit, seeing the vices of the enemy before they actually come to fruition because you're listening to God's voice, trying to warn his people to steer clear of this stuff and whatever it is they're offering. So she goes into the manufacturing facility, which is basically a bunch of dead bodies with fungus growing out of their pineal glands in the roof of the mouth.
Ergebnis ist dann positiv. Verstehst du? Ja.
Now, I'm interrupting myself because there is no need for fear. In fact, you should be rejoicing right now that God is revealing to you the things that you'll be able to equip yourself to protect yourself from these weapons that the enemy is bringing to bear against all the sleep people. Who we need to be praying for are the sleep people who walk right into the enemy's traps. Okay? And God knows their heart. And if he wills it, they'll watch a decode like this and wake up. But also, if their heart is dark, full of darkness, they might just fall under the strong delusion. There's nothing you or I can do about that except pray for them. You know, when we're newly awake Christians, we feel like we can save every single person. I used to feel like that. And you realize that you can't. You have to have faith. In fact, if you think you can save every single person, that's almost a form of idolatry. That's almost a form of elevating yourself to deity. Because you can't. You have to have faith that God's will be done in everything in this life, even if it's someone you love. All of you know my mother's a Jehovah's Witness with some very strange beliefs. I can't convince her. That's my own mother, who I love very much. If I were to get consumed with that and think that I was the person that had to convince her, I wouldn't be able to be there for all the people who are just on the fence, ready to understand all of this and how it's working. Let's keep watching here. Let me check in with you guys first and we'll keep watching. I know this is a long show, but this is a very, very important show because this will be our future, you guys. Okay, looks like you guys are here. Very good. Let's keep going here.
Hey!
So here, look at this. The black mold coming out. These are the mold spores being released out of the body. I just had a subscriber come into the comment section literally 2 days ago and said her husband died. He was obese, and as soon as he died, his body began to be taken over by mold. Well, it happened last year in this movie. Let's keep watching. Obviously is the black goo, the black smoke, the serpent in the chest. As they're operating on this guy, the serpent, it's a spirit because no one else can see it but him. But the boy who is connected to this spirit through the fungus pills that he's been eating. So everything that we've been talking about, I remember we first started covering the serpent in the chest, and I probably lost subscribers. They're like, Casey, what are you on about now? You just make stuff up. But yet here we are. It's repeating over and over and over again. We identified Superman, serpent in the chest. We identified the what is it? I gotta go by memory here. Stargate SG-1, the Goa'uld, serpent in the chest. Alien, all the Alien franchises, serpent in the chest. We've got Donnie Darko, who described time travel as a spear coming out through the chest. We had Battlestar Galactica with the Apollo's arrow coming out of his chest, which was where they were able to jump through time. And the list goes on and on and on. You'll see this. Now, I shared with you guys at some point, many shows ago, that I, as a young person, had a reoccurring vision. And now I'm believing that this vision was a vision from the Most High, of having my mouth full of like eraser shavings from an eraser. Many of you will remember I mentioned that to you. Well, what if that was a vision of the future of mankind being full of the fungus in the mouth? Let's keep watching here. Repeated over and over and over again because this is the truth. This isn't just a YouTube channel making things up for clicks and views. Let's keep watching.
Hey, seht ihr das nicht? Hey!
Sie glaubten damit das Tor zur Welt der Dämonen.
They believed it opened the doors to the world of demons, spirits, and God. And here's the demonic possession aspect to this that links into what we've been talking about.
Geister und Götter zu öffnen.
So this stuff is what it does is it opens up the host body to demonic possession. Keep watching.
Seit der Durchsetzung moderner Hygiene und kontrollierter Bestattung.
Now let's back that up a little bit. That's important.
Welt der Dämonen, Geister und Götter zu öffnen. Seit der
Since the introduction of modern hygiene and controlled burials,
Durchsetzung moderner Hygiene und kontrollierter Bestattung gilt er
it is considered extinct.
als ausgestorben. Der Nekrofungus.
The necrofungus, I can't pronounce that, was used in the Middle Ages
Psilocybellus wurde bis ins Mittelalter wegen seiner halluzinogenen
because of its hallucinogenic effects of shamans and witches.
Wirkung von Schamanen und Hexen benutzt.
Also sind die
So they are like, these things are like magic mushrooms, he asks?
Dinger sowas wie Magic Mushrooms oder was?
Wohl eher Black Magic Mushrooms.
More like black magic mushrooms.
Wenn das Zeug wirklich ein Tor aufstößt.
What if this opens like a gateway to another world? Here's the exactly we've been talking about as well. The portal. The portal is opened to allow the demon to possess you. Now, how does this apply to all of us? Well, you don't want to make yourself a host body, obviously. So you stay away from their devices and things that they're using to try to convert you into a host body. That's the whole point of these studies, is a warning because the devil will try to trick you. Now, God will work with you. He'll try to give you chances. He'll try to warn you. This is one such warning. But, you know, the devil has a huge voice here in this reality, doesn't he? And it's hard for people to come to terms with the truth, and they put too much trust in these companies and their governments. And God is telling you not to. Trust him, not their vices, not their tools. Let's keep watching.
Zur Geisterwelt.
So, well, let me back myself up there. Look at the earrings. Watching. The spiral snake earrings. Portals, aren't they? Wow.
Zur Geisterwelt.
So, this is crazy. So, this is their house. And in their house, they worship the fungus, the Hydra serpent. You can see it right back here in the wall in this display. It's a serpent with a split tail that looks like a Hydra coming out of its tail. It's some kind of... Now, this is the tannin monster that we covered, which is like a Hydra. The tannin monster. Sculpture. Now, let's get into some of the spiritual significance of what you're looking at here. Because obviously, the serpent Hydra is sitting in a library, isn't it? The serpent controls the library. It's positioned in between the books. Now, let's go into the chat. I want to see if anyone knows the spiritual significance of this Hydra sitting in the rack of books. Now, we've covered this before. We've covered this before on a different movie, what the library means. About 3 or 4 movies we've covered this on. Okay, let's see what you guys think about this library. Yes, it is evil, Rebecca. You are 100% correct. Which is why people need to see this so they can go, stop just thinking they're going to just simple movies. And we are the books. Yes, Sanja. We are the books. Now, let me explain to you why we are the books. And why the enemy always depicts us this way. We start out as trees. As people. Humanity is... People are trees. We have limbs like a tree. We have a crown like a tree. We even have a trunk like a tree, the trunk of your body. And the paper in the books represents our life written out, doesn't it? Now let me expand on that, okay? God said he created us in his image. We look like trees. So what does God look like? Probably a tree, which would make sense. Now, this doesn't mean we go out and worship trees. That's what the pagans do, right? But think about that for a second. You have a trunk. You have a crown. You have limbs. We were created in the image of a tree. To me, that's fascinating. We set down roots. We bear fruit as children. Now, no one has seen the face of God and lived. But what an amazing connection. Let's keep watching here. Except here's the problem. We're imprisoned in the square page. We're imprisoned in the 3-dimensional book, which is a cube. It's basically a smashed cube. We are trapped in the matrix. Until the new book of life is written that releases us from this curse. This is how the enemy wants us and sees us. As books stacked on a shelf, you can look at them, but they're trapped. They're in prison. This is like a apartment building you're looking at here. Let's keep watching. So this guy gets infected and he starts to go crazy. And they pull the fungus out of his pineal gland. Now, for those of you that don't like visual imagery, I mean, it's all fake blood and everything. I'm way past getting troubled about what I see because it's all just Hollywood, right? But so if you're sensitive to that, you might want to look away for the next 90 seconds.
Hey, Alter, brauchst du Hilfe oder so?
Hol mal einen Sauger.
Get the suction tube. Cut a hole in his palate.
Was ist das im Rachen?
What's in his mouth? What is that? They pull out the Hydra.
Das sieht aus wie eine Wucherung.
And it's basically attached to his pineal gland, okay? Same way that aliens from the Alien franchise would infect their host. They would attach to the face, to the pineal position, and insert it inside until the possession occurred and it popped out through the chest, remember?
Trontal Medical and Research.
Tronthal Medical and Research, ready for launch of psychoactive drug. And she's going to talk here about opening the gates of hell. And that's because once the host body has been sufficiently modified, chaos will ensue once the demons start infecting host bodies all around the world.
Ready for launch of new psychoactive drug. Okay, pass auf, die machen heute so
I saw that they're doing a market launch event today.
eine Veranstaltung zur Markteinführung. Albträume.
I have nightmares. Is that normal? Anxiety.
Ist das normal? Angstzustände. Was zu diesen
It's heavy stuff that they say online about these pills.
Pillen im Internet steht. Fehlt nur noch, dass sie
But no one says be careful, an overdose will open the gates of hell.
sagen, Vorsicht, bei Überdosierung öffnet sich das Tor zur Hölle.
So the market launch in the film for this triclopyr is April 8th, 2022, which is the 98th day of the year, which hasn't happened yet, has it? I don't date set on this channel, but I just showed you a date that hadn't happened yet. And well, I guess we can see if something happens on that date, right?
Du kannst sehr stolz sein, Finn.
You should be very proud, Finn. You'll be taking in someone very special. So basically, in the end, they tried to initiate the boy by infecting him with this black fungal spores from this older host body who is already used up, wants to go into a young boy. And I'm not going to show that here because it's a bit shocking, because his grandfather basically gets on top of him and opens his mouth and like vomits these spores into his mouth. But Finn ends up getting away and he's able to pull the Hydra off of his pineal gland.
Denn du willst jemand ganz Besonderen
You should be very proud, Finn. You'll be taking in someone very special.
aufnehmen. Du wirst ihm ein
You will certainly be a good home for him.
gutes Zuhause sein.
There he pulls this thing off of his pineal gland. So that's it. Now I'm going to go back into the chat here. And we'll go back into our chat, our real chat. That was the end of that. Wow, what a doozy, right? Let's go into our chat, see if there's anything you guys want to talk about before we end the show today. I don't want to go too long because that was a long show. But now you have to ask yourself. I've heard stories that people have shared with me about moldy cannabis. You know, these people can use any avenue that they want to get the mold inside of our bodies, can't they? They can just drop a little here, drop a little there, especially if it's something unregulated. You know, they get their permission from, you know, to do these dirty things and to launch these weapons through our own vices. If we worship things and idolize things that we're not supposed to be idolizing, what's to stop these people from dropping a little in there to infect us? Just a question, okay? Because I know people like to idolize certain things in their life, don't they? And that goes for everything, not just cannabis. There's other things that people idolize in their life that the enemy can use spiritually to drop a little of this stuff in there. So, yes, don't give in to their fear. And like the Bible says, no weapon shall prosper. Which means if you're in his will and you basically begin, you try to live in his will in all things in your life, not to say we're perfect, but you try, then God can protect you, right? So, what else do we have going on in here? Yes, the vape pens have been moldy too. People have shared stories with me about that. There's many ways that the enemy can sneak inside of your body, can't he? And we need to maybe start to streamline with our health and everything else. All right. What else do we have in here? Let me zoom you guys up. Welcome, everyone. I'll put a link to that decode that I did from a year ago. I'll put a link to that for those of you that want to see it in its entirety, because there was a question and answer session at the end. So for those of you that are interested. And according to that decode, I guess we were even talking about mold 3 months before that. I hadn't found those videos, but there may be even more clues about that. So let's see here. Heard about the eye drops. No, I haven't. Can do decode the RBG statue in New York. Huh. Which Bible app did I use? It's called qbible.com. Let me write that down. RBG statue, New York. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Yes, pray against these weapons. Absolutely. And we'll follow the fungus infection epidemic stories as they begin to emerge. I'm almost positive there will be more to come, and we'll stay on top of it. But the takeaway here is everything that you do that the enemy wants you to do is going to make you susceptible to these things. And I can't get specific about that. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. The kid yanking worms off his gland is impossible. Yep, not without Jesus. How are all the names different colors? I didn't pick up on that. A Cry in the Wilderness movie decode. Let me write that down. Cry in the Wilderness. Thank you. Now, tomorrow we will be going over, well, actually, it's going to be Sunday, I believe. Wait, what's today? Today Friday? Yes, today is Friday. Sunday, we are going to show you the number 66 appearing in the very last episode of the Addams Family reboot called Wednesday, in which Wednesday is killed. Not Wednesday, but her counterpart, who is an identical twin, is killed in the last episode. Her Gemini twin, which is one of her ancestors that appears as a ghost. Why is it important that the number 66 appears in that episode? Well, because 66 days later, the real Wednesday, who played in the original Addams Family, died. How did she die? They called it smoking-induced stroke. Well, who kills Wednesday in the last episode? A smoke demon. You can't make this up. So we'll be covering that. And maybe some headlines on Sunday as well. Headlines are starting to stack up. There's some weird balloon from China floating over Montana that they say they can't shoot down because it might land on somebody. There's nobody that lives in Montana. It's probably going to end up in a forest somewhere. So we're going to get between the headlines as well on Sunday. We're going to start about 9 a.m. Central Time. And all the other updates that are going on. Wow. Anyway, I love each and every one of you guys. I don't want to keep you on here too long. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care and be safe.